67-year-old Sheldon arrives at his son Nathan's wedding rehearsal dinner, walking with his old cane and wearing his usual modest clothes. As he enters the elegant venue, he overhears his future daughter-in-law Madison telling her bridesmaids that she's marrying Nathan, despite his pathetic father, who can barely afford groceries. She laughs about how she convinced Nathan to limit Sheldon to just 5 wedding guests, because poor people shouldn't embarrass us. Sheldon grips his cane tighter, feeling the weight of the digital recorder in his pocket that's been capturing every cruel word for months. 6 months before that painful moment at the rehearsal dinner, my life changed in ways I never expected. I was sitting in my small kitchen, nursing a cup of black coffee, and reading the morning newspaper when the phone rang. The voice on the other end belonged to Harold's attorney, Mr. Blackwood. "Mr. Sheldon Morrison," he asked formally. "Yes, this is Sheldon," I replied, setting down my coffee cup. "I'm calling regarding your brother Harold Morrison's estate. I'm sorry for your loss." Harold and I hadn't spoken in 15 years. We'd had a falling out over something so trivial, I couldn't even remember what started it. Pride kept us apart, and now it was too late. My younger brother had built a technology empire from nothing, becoming one of those Silicon Valley success stories you read about in magazines. "Harold left you something in his will," Mr. Blackwood continued. "Could you come to my office this afternoon?" That meeting changed everything. I sat in that mahogany-paneled office, staring at documents that didn't seem real. $78 million. My brother had left me $78 million and a letter. "Dear Sheldon." The letter began in Harold's familiar handwriting. "I'm sorry we wasted so many years being stubborn. I know you never cared about money, which is exactly why I'm leaving you mine. Wealth doesn't change who we are, brother. It reveals who we are. Use it wisely, and more importantly, use it to see people clearly. They show their true faces when money is involved. I learned that the hard way. Don't make my mistakes. Your brother Harold." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my jacket pocket, where it would remain. Mr. Blackwood explained the transfers, the accounts, the properties I now owned. But I asked him to keep everything confidential. I needed time to think. 2 weeks later, Nathan called with news of his own. "Dad, I have something incredible to tell you." His voice buzzed with excitement through the phone. "I proposed to Madison last night. She said yes." I'd met Madison Caldwell exactly 3 times. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, came from what Nathan called a good family, and had the kind of polished appearance that belonged in fashion magazines. Each time we'd met, she'd been perfectly polite, though something in her eyes reminded me of winter frost. "That's wonderful, son," I said, genuinely happy for Nathan's joy. "When do I get to celebrate with you both?" "Actually, Madison wants to have dinner this weekend. Her parents will be there too. She's very excited to bring our families together." That dinner became my first real glimpse behind Madison's perfect mask. I arrived at the upscale restaurant in my usual attire, clean but simple clothes I'd worn for years. My late wife Emma had always said I cleaned up nice enough, and that was good enough for me. I still walked with the cane I'd needed since a postal route injury 10 years back, though I could manage without it on good days. The Caldwells were already seated when I arrived. Madison's father, Richard, stood to shake my hand with the kind of grip that tried to establish dominance. Her mother, Patricia, offered a smile that never reached her eyes. "So," Richard began before we'd even ordered appetizers, "Nathan tells us you worked for the Postal Service." 35 years, I answered proudly. Rain or shine, I delivered mail to 500 homes on my route. Madison and her mother exchanged a look I pretended not to notice. The evening progressed with subtle jabs disguised as conversation. They asked about my little house and whether I found retirement challenging financially. Nathan tried to steer the conversation to other topics, but Madison always brought it back to money. Then came the moment that started everything. I reached for my water glass, just as Madison moved her wine. The collision sent Merlot splashing across the white tablecloth, and onto my shirt, the only dress shirt I'd brought to the restaurant. "Oh!" Madison gasped, But her eyes held something else entirely. "I'm so clumsy. Here." She thrust a napkin at me with the kind of disgust usually reserved for cleaning up after animals. "No harm done," I said, dabbing at the stain. Nathan excused himself to get some club soda from the bar. The moment he was gone, Madison leaned closer. "You know," she said in a voice sweet as antifreeze, "there's a Goodwill on 3rd Street. They have surprisingly nice things sometimes. You should check it out." Her parents said nothing, though Patricia had the decency to look uncomfortable. That night, I made a decision. I went to the electronics store the next day and bought a small digital recorder. Harold's words echoed in my mind. They show their true faces when money is involved. But I wondered if they'd show their true faces when they thought no money was involved at all. The test had begun, though nobody knew it but me. Over the following weeks, I maintained my usual routine. I shopped at discount stores, clipped coupons, and drove my 20-year-old Ford pickup truck. When Nathan brought Madison over for Sunday dinners, I served simple meals on my old dishes, the ones Emma and I had gotten as wedding gifts 40 years ago. Madison's behavior shifted gradually, like a snake shedding its skin. First came the subtle suggestions. "Nathan, doesn't your father look tired?" she'd say. "Maybe he's doing too much maintaining this house all by himself." Then the comments grew bolder. "You know Sheldon," she said one evening while Nathan was in the bathroom. "They have wonderful senior communities now, very affordable. Some even have payment plans." I played my part perfectly, mentioning my fixed income and Social Security checks. Each time money came up, I watched her eyes sharpen like a predator sensing weakness. The recorder in my pocket captured every word, every cruel suggestion wrapped in false concern. But I needed to see how far she would go. Harold had been right. Money, or the lack of it, revealed everything. 3 months into their engagement, Madison suggested they have their wedding at an exclusive country club. "It's $20,000 just for the venue," Nathan said, looking stressed. "Maybe we should consider something smaller." "Absolutely not," Madison snapped. Then, catching herself, she softened her tone. "I mean, we only get married once, darling. Daddy will help with the costs. We certainly can't expect your father to contribute." She looked at me, then, with a mixture of pity and disgust that would have been amusing if it hadn't been aimed at breaking my son's spirit. "I wish I could help," I said, playing into her expectations. "But you know how it is on a fixed income." "Of course," Madison cooed. "We understand completely. Don't we, Nathan?" My son nodded, but I saw the disappointment in his eyes. Not disappointment in me, but in himself for not being able to provide everything his bride wanted. That look nearly broke my resolve. I almost told him everything right then. But Harold's letter burned in my pocket. The test wasn't complete. I needed to know exactly who my son was marrying for his own sake. That night, I called Mr. Blackwood and had him investigate the Caldwell family. What he found was interesting, though not entirely surprising. Richard Caldwell's company was bleeding money, propped up by creative accounting. They lived beyond their means, and Madison's expensive tastes were funded by credit cards nearly maxed out. They needed this wedding. More specifically, they needed Nathan, who had a successful career in software development and no knowledge of their financial troubles. I filed this information away and continued my test. The recorder kept running, gathering evidence of who Madison Caldwell really was beneath her polished exterior. Each interaction added another piece to the puzzle, and the picture emerging was far uglier than even I had anticipated. But the worst was yet to come. Madison had only begun to show her true nature, and I had 5 more months of testing ahead before her mask would finally slip completely at that rehearsal dinner. The game was in motion, and I was playing for the highest stakes possible: my son's future happiness. The autumn leaves were falling when Madison's campaign against me began in earnest. What started as snide remarks and subtle digs evolved into something far more calculated and cruel. She had decided, it seemed, that I was an obstacle to be removed from her perfect life. It began on a Thursday evening. Nathan had invited me to dinner at their apartment, a modern place in the city that Madison had decorated in stark whites and grays. Everything looked like it belonged in a furniture catalog, including Madison herself, perfectly arranged on the couch in her designer dress. Sheldon. She greeted me with that false warmth she'd perfected. "How nice of you to make the drive. I hope it wasn't too difficult with your hip." "My hip's fine." I said, though I'd never mentioned any hip problems. "The knee acts up sometimes, but the cane helps." Of course, of course." She waved her manicured hand dismissively. "Well, come in. Nathan's still at work, running late as usual." That should have been my first warning. Nathan was never late when we had plans. Madison poured herself wine and offered me water, not bothering to ask if I might prefer something else. She settled across from me, studying me like a specimen in a lab. "I've been thinking," she began, pulling out a folder from beside the couch, "about your future." "My future's doing just fine," I replied, but she was already spreading brochures across the coffee table. "These are wonderful assisted living communities," she continued, ignoring my response. "Very affordable. This one," she tapped a brochure with a photo of a depressing gray building, "is only $800 a month. They have payment assistance programs for people in your situation." I picked up the brochure. Sunset Manor was located in the worst part of the city, with reviews I wouldn't wish on my enemies. "Madison, I'm perfectly capable of living in my own home." Her laugh tinkled like broken glass. "For now, perhaps. But we have to think ahead. Nathan worries about you constantly. It's affecting his work, his health. Surely you don't want to be a burden." The word burden hung in the air between us. I set down the brochure and met her eyes. "Did Nathan ask you to look into this?" "He's too kind to bring it up himself." She lied smoothly. "That's why I'm taking initiative. Someone has to think practically about these things." The front door opened then, and Nathan walked in, looking surprised to see me. "Dad, I thought dinner was at 7. "It is 7, I said. Madison jumped up, all sweetness and light. "Oh, darling, I must have told you 8. My silly mistake. Good thing I had your father come early so we could chat." She kissed Nathan on the cheek, and I watched my son's face carefully. He believed her completely. Over dinner, Madison steered every conversation toward my supposed declining health and financial struggles. She mentioned how her parents had helped her grandmother transition to assisted living, how much happier she was with professional care. "Dad's not going anywhere," Nathan said firmly at one point, and I felt a surge of pride. Madison's smile tightened. "Of course not, darling. I'm just saying we should be prepared." 2 weeks later, Nathan's birthday arrived. I'd spent days making him a photo album, collecting pictures from his childhood, his college years, photos of him with Emma before she passed. I'd written notes on each page, memories and stories he might have forgotten. The card I chose had taken an hour to pick out, and I'd written a long message inside about how proud his mother would be of the man he'd become. I arrived at Nathan's office to drop off the gift, planning to surprise him. His secretary, Anne, smiled when she saw me. "He just stepped into a meeting, but you can leave that with me," she offered. I handed her the wrapped album and card. "Make sure he gets this today." "Of course, Mr. Morrison. He's lucky to have you." But Nathan never received my gift. I found out a week later when I asked how he'd liked the album. "What album?" he asked, genuinely confused. "The photo album I left with Anne, for your birthday." Nathan frowned. "Anne said you never came by." I knew then that Madison had intercepted it somehow, but I couldn't prove it, and accusing her would only make me look paranoid. Instead, I apologized for the confusion and promised to put together another one. The next incident was worse. Madison started telling Nathan I'd been asking her for money. She showed him text messages on her phone, messages I'd never sent from numbers I didn't recognize. "Dad." Nathan confronted me one Sunday, his face a mixture of hurt and confusion. Madison showed me the texts. "Why didn't you just ask me if you needed help?" I stared at him, genuinely shocked. "What texts?" He pulled out his phone, showing me a string of messages, supposedly from me, begging Madison for grocery money, for help with medical bills, pleading with her not to tell Nathan. "Son, I never sent these. I don't even have Madison's number saved in my phone." "Dad, please don't lie to me. Madison's trying to help. She wanted to give you the money, but I told her you'd be too proud to take it." The hurt in his voice nearly undid me. My own son thought I was not only begging for money, but lying about it. I wanted to take out my phone, show him my messages, prove my innocence. But looking at his face, I realized the damage was done. Madison had been planting seeds of doubt for months. He wanted to believe me, but she'd been too clever. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. I didn't mean to put anyone in an awkward position. Nathan's shoulders relaxed. "It's okay, Dad. Just come to me next time, all right? We're family." That night, I sat in Harold's study, the one room in my house I'd upgraded with his money, though no one knew about it. I played back my recordings, listening to Madison's voice drip with false concern and genuine malice. But recordings of her being mean wouldn't be enough. Nathan would think I'd been secretly taping his fiancée out of spite. I needed more. I hired a private investigator, Thomas Garrett, a former police detective Harold's attorney recommended. I tasked him with one simple job: watch Madison when she was around me and document everything. It didn't take long to pay off. Thomas caught Madison on video entering my house when I wasn't home, using the spare key Nathan had given her for emergencies. She went through my mail, photographed my bank statements, and searched my computer. She was looking for financial information, trying to figure out exactly how much money I had or didn't have. But the most damning thing Thomas recorded was a phone conversation Madison had in her car after leaving my house. "He's poorer than we thought," she said to someone. "Social Security and a tiny pension. The house is all he has, and it's mortgaged. Nathan will inherit basically nothing unless the old fool dies soon." The other voice, which Thomas later identified as her best friend Brittany, laughed. "So, what's the plan?" "Get him out of the picture," Madison replied. "Into a home where he belongs. Once we're married, I'll have power of attorney within a year. Nathan's too trusting to see it coming." I listened to that recording 5 times, each repetition hardening my resolve. This wasn't just about disliking your future father-in-law. This was calculated cruelty, with a specific end goal: complete control over my son, and the elimination of any inconvenient family members. But Madison wasn't done with her campaign. She escalated her attacks, becoming bolder with each success. She convinced Nathan that my forgetfulness was getting worse, pointing out instances where I'd forgotten conversations that never happened, or misplaced items she'd moved herself. She suggested I be evaluated for dementia. She told their friends that I'd made inappropriate comments to her when we were alone. Nothing specific enough to confront, but enough to make people uncomfortable around me. She scheduled family dinners at restaurants she knew I couldn't afford, then made a show of covering my portion, while loudly proclaiming that family helps family. Each cruelty was carefully calculated to isolate me from Nathan, while maintaining her image as the devoted, concerned future daughter-in-law. Ruth, my neighbor, noticed the change in me. Ruth had been a corporate attorney for 40 years before retiring, and she had a sharp eye for people. "That boy of yours doesn't come around as much," she observed one afternoon as we sat on my porch. "He's busy with wedding planning," I said, but Ruth wasn't buying it. "Sheldon Morrison, I've known you for 15 years. Something's eating at you. Is it that flashy girl he's marrying?" I considered confiding in Ruth, but held back. This was my test to complete my son to protect. "She's different," I said carefully. "But Nathan loves her." Ruth snorted. "Love makes people stupid. You mark my words, that girl's trouble. I've seen her type in courtrooms for decades. Pretty smile, poison heart." If only she knew how right she was. As winter approached, Madison's campaign reached new heights. She created a wedding planning committee that specifically excluded me, telling Nathan I'd said I wasn't interested in all that fuss. She changed the date of the engagement party 3 times, only informing me of the first change, ensuring I showed up on the wrong night. But she made one mistake. In her arrogance, she began to believe her own lies about my supposed mental decline and poverty. She got comfortable careless. She started saying things in front of others, believing they'd take her side against the poor old man. She didn't notice Patricia's growing discomfort, or the way some of Nathan's friends exchanged glances when she made her cutting remarks. And through it all, my recorder kept running, Thomas kept watching, and I kept playing the part of the failing father, too poor and proud to ask for help. The final piece of this phase came when Madison suggested to Nathan that they should handle my finances. Just to help him, she explained one evening when they'd invited me for dinner. Daddy knows a financial advisor who specializes in helping seniors manage their limited resources. I appreciate the concern, I said mildly, but I've been managing my own money for 50 years. And look where that's gotten you. Madison snapped, then caught herself. I mean, there's no shame in needing help. We just want what's best for you. Nathan looked uncomfortable. Madison Dad's always been independent. Independent doesn't mean stubborn, she countered. Sometimes accepting help is the loving thing to do, for everyone's sake. I watched my son wrestle with the decision, torn between his fiancée and his father. In the end, he chose the middle ground. Let's table this for now, he suggested. No one needs to make any decisions tonight. Madison's face showed a flash of fury before smoothing back into concern. Of course, darling. I'm just thinking ahead. Always thinking ahead. Always planning. But she had no idea that I was planning too, and my plan was far more comprehensive than hers. As I drove home that night in my old truck, I thought about Harold. He'd tried to warn me about people like Madison, people who saw dollar signs where others saw family. But even he couldn't have imagined someone this calculating. The recorder in my pocket held hours of evidence now. Thomas had files full of surveillance, but I wasn't ready to reveal anything yet. The wedding was still months away, and Madison had shown me she was capable of anything. The game was far from over, and the stakes kept rising. My son's happiness, his future, his very soul seemed to hang in the balance. And I was the only one who could save him, even if it meant letting him hate me in the process. The test would continue no matter how much it hurt to watch my son slip further under her spell. Sometimes, I learned being a good father means letting your child think you're a bad one, just long enough to protect them from a truth they're not ready to see. January brought a bitter cold to our city, but it was nothing compared to the chill Madison brought into our lives. With the wedding set for June, she shifted into high gear, orchestrating every detail with military precision, while systematically excluding me from each decision. The venue selection was the first battle in her war of exclusion. Nathan had mentioned they were viewing places on a Saturday morning, and I'd offered to join them. That's sweet, Madison had said with her practiced smile. But venue selection is really for contributing family members. We wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable when we discuss budgets. The words, contributing family members, hit exactly as she'd intended. Nathan shifted uncomfortably beside her. Dad's family, he said. He should be there. Madison's hand found his arm, squeezing gently. Of course he's family, darling. I just meant that financial discussions might be stressful for him. We want to protect his feelings. I've sat through plenty of financial discussions in my life, I said evenly. Raised a son on a postal worker's salary. I think I can handle hearing some numbers. But Madison had already moved on, pulling out her phone to show Nathan something about centerpieces. The conversation was over, and I'd lost. They chose the Grandview Country Club, a place where Madison's father held a membership, and where the Caldwell name carried weight. $20,000 just to walk through the doors, not counting food, flowers, or anything else. I heard about it secondhand from Nathan, who looked almost apologetic when he told me. It's beautiful, Dad. Madison's always dreamed of getting married there. I'm sure it's perfect, I said, meaning it. Whatever made Nathan happy was fine by me, even if it came with Madison attached. The tuxedo fitting debacle came 2 weeks later. Nathan had texted me the details Saturday, 2 o'clock at Fitzgerald Formal Wear downtown. I arrived at 1:45, only to find the shop confused about my appointment. "We have the Morrison wedding party down for noon," the clerk said, checking his computer. "They left about an hour ago." I called Nathan immediately, but Madison answered his phone. "Oh, Sheldon. Didn't you get my text? I had to change the time because of a conflict with the caterer. Such a shame you missed it, but don't worry. I had them estimate your measurements based on Nathan's. You're about the same size, right?" We weren't even close to the same size. Nathan had his mother's lean build, while I carried my father's broader shoulders. But arguing would only make me seem difficult. "That was thoughtful of you," I managed. "I do try to think of everything," she replied sweetly. "Oh, and the rental fee was added to our bill. You can just pay us back whenever it's convenient. No rush, of course. We know money's tight." The rental was $300 for a tuxedo that wouldn't even fit properly. But I thanked her and hung up, adding another recording to my collection. Thomas, my investigator, had interesting news when we met for coffee that week. He'd been digging deeper into the Caldwell's finances and found something significant. Richard Caldwell is in serious trouble, he told me, sliding a folder across the table. His company's been cooking books for 3 years. The FBI's building a case. He's maybe 6 months from indictment. I studied the documents, understanding now why Madison was so eager to lock down Nathan. She wasn't just after a comfortable life. She was securing a lifeboat before her family's ship sank. "Does she know?" I asked. "She's her father's daughter," Thomas said. "She's been moving her assets around, distancing herself financially. Smart girl. Evil, but smart." That evening, I couldn't help but notice the strain on Patricia Caldwell when we all met for dinner to discuss wedding plans. She'd lost weight, and her hands shook slightly as she reached for her wine glass. She knew what was coming for her husband, even if she couldn't admit it. "The flowers alone are costing $8,000, Madison announced proudly. "But Daddy says you can't put a price on perfection." Richard nodded absently, his mind clearly elsewhere. Patricia finished her wine and signaled for another. "That seems like a lot for flowers," I ventured. Madison's eyes flashed. "Well, when you didn't contribute anything, you don't really get to comment on costs, do you?" The table went silent. Even Richard looked up from his brooding. "Madison," Nathan said sharply, "that was uncalled for." "What? I'm just being honest. Your father made his choices in life. He chose a simple career, a simple life. There's nothing wrong with that, but he can't expect to have opinions on things beyond his understanding." "Flowers are flowers," I said quietly. "I understand them just fine. Emma grew the most beautiful garden you ever saw. Roses, tulips, daffodils. Didn't cost $8,000 either." "Well," Madison sniffed, "home gardens and wedding arrangements are hardly the same thing." Patricia suddenly stood swaying slightly. "Excuse me," she said, and walked unsteadily toward the restroom. I excused myself as well, following at a distance. I found her in the corridor, leaning against the wall with tears streaming down her face. "Mrs. Caldwell, are you all right?" She looked at me with haunted eyes. "You're a good man, Sheldon. Better than we deserve." "I don't understand." She laughed bitterly. "My daughter. She's just like her father. Take. Use people up and throw them away." She grabbed my arm suddenly. "Your son's a good boy. She doesn't deserve him." "Patricia," I said gently, "what's really going on?" Her eyes darted around, checking for observers. She did this before. Her first husband, Marcus. Sweet boy from a good family. She isolated him from everyone who loved him. Took him for everything in the divorce after she got bored. His mother tried to warn him, but Madison had already poisoned him against her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've watched you these months. The way she treats you. The things she says." Patricia's grip tightened. "I was that mother once, watching my son marry a woman who destroyed him. But I was too proud to speak up, too concerned with appearances. Don't make my mistake." "Patricia," Madison's voice cut through the moment like ice. "What are you doing?" Patricia released my arm, straightening her dress. Just feeling a bit dizzy. Sheldon was kind enough to check on me. Madison's eyes moved between us, calculating. How thoughtful. Come on, Mother. Let's get you back to the table. As she led Patricia away, Madison glanced back at me with a look that could have frozen blood. She knew her mother had said something, even if she didn't know what. The next few weeks brought fresh humiliations. Madison scheduled the menu tasting for a Wednesday afternoon, knowing I couldn't make it because of my weekly medical appointments. She chose the band without consultation, selected a photographer who specialized in intimate family portraits that somehow never included me in the planning. But the cruelest cut came when Nathan mentioned the wedding party arrangements. Madison wants her cousin James to walk me down the aisle, he said over lunch, not quite meeting my eyes. Since you know both parents traditionally walk with the bride. I thought fathers walked their sons down the aisle all the time. I said, though my heart was breaking. They do, but Madison feels it would be more balanced this way. More symmetrical for photos. Photos, I repeated. Nathan finally looked up. Dad, you know I'd prefer you to be there with me. But Madison has this vision, and she's been so stressed with all the planning. I understand, I lied. Whatever makes her happy. But I saw the disappointment in Nathan's eyes. Not in me, but in himself for not standing up for what he wanted. Madison had him so twisted around he couldn't even fight for his own father anymore. The investigation into Madison continued to yield disturbing results. Thomas discovered she'd been in contact with a divorce attorney already, just getting information for a friend, she'd claimed. She'd also been researching Nathan's company's stock options and retirement plans. She's planning for a divorce before she's even married, Thomas told me. Classic gold digger behavior, but with a sophisticated twist. She knows exactly how long to wait, what to document, how to position herself as the victim. Just like her first husband. I muttered, remembering Patricia's words. You want me to reach out to him, Marcus Wellington? He might have insights. I considered it, but shook my head. Not yet. Let her hang herself with her own rope. Ruth, my neighbor, had noticed the wedding preparations happening without me. She'd developed a habit of checking on me more frequently, bringing over casseroles and staying for tea. That girl banned you from your own son's wedding planning, she said bluntly one afternoon. Don't deny it. Anne from Nathan's office lives 2 blocks over. She told me about the birthday gift that went missing. Ruth, it's complicated. No, it's not, she countered. It's simple. That woman is a snake, and you're letting her poison your boy. Sometimes, I said carefully, you have to let someone show their true colors in their own time. Ruth studied me with those sharp lawyer eyes. You're up to something, Sheldon Morrison. I've seen that look in too many courtrooms. You're building a case. I neither confirmed nor denied, but Ruth smiled knowingly. Good, she said. Give her hell, but do it smart. That type always has a backup plan. 2 weeks before the wedding, the final pieces of Madison's pre-wedding cruelty fell into place. She organized a family celebration dinner at the country club, inviting extended family from both sides. When I arrived, I found my place card at a table in the back corner with the +1s and distant relatives. Oh, Sheldon, Madison said when I questioned the seating. I thought you'd be more comfortable there. All the main tables are for wedding party and immediate family. You understand. I'm Nathan's father, I said. How much more immediate can family get? She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. Family supports family, Sheldon. What have you supported lately besides your own pride? I could have ended it then. Could have pulled out my phone and played any number of recordings. But the wedding was 2 weeks away, and I needed her to believe she'd won completely. You're right, I said loud enough for others to hear. I'll sit wherever you think is best. Her smile was triumphant. I knew you'd understand. We all have our places in life. As I walked to my assigned table, I passed Patricia Caldwell. She wouldn't meet my eyes, but her hand briefly touched mine as I passed a silent apology for her daughter's behavior. The dinner was interminable. From my corner table, I watched Madison hold court, regaling everyone with stories about the wedding, planning the honeymoon in Bora Bora, the life she and Nathan would build together. Not once did she mention me, except to note that Nathan's father couldn't contribute financially, but we're just happy he can attend. Nathan looked miserable, but trapped. Every time he tried to include me in conversation, or wave me over, Madison would redirect his attention to someone important. Near the end of the evening, Ruth appeared at my table. I hadn't known she was invited. Anne invited me as her +1, she explained, sitting down beside me. Figured you could use an ally in enemy territory. Enemy territory, I repeated. Is that what this is? Look around, Sheldon. You're at the reject table at your own son's wedding dinner. If this isn't enemy territory, I don't know what is. She was right, of course. But what Madison didn't know was that enemy territory was exactly where I wanted to be. You learn more about your opponents from the shadows than you ever do in the spotlight. 2 more weeks, I said quietly. Ruth raised her eyebrow. Until the wedding. Until everything changes, I replied. As the evening wound down, I made my rounds congratulating Nathan and Madison, thanking the Caldwells for playing the part of the grateful, slightly pathetic father-in-law-to-be. Madison ate up her superiority complex, fully fed. We'll see you at the rehearsal dinner next week, she said, as I prepared to leave. Do try to find something appropriate to wear. I'd hate for you to feel out of place. I'll do my best, I assured her. As I walked to my truck, I felt the weight of everything I'd gathered these past months. The recordings, the evidence, the testimonies from Patricia and potentially Marcus. Madison thought she'd won, that she'd successfully marginalized the poor old father, who stood between her and complete control over Nathan. But Harold had taught me something valuable in his letter, Wealth Reveals Character. Madison had revealed hers completely, and it was uglier than even I had imagined. The wedding was in 2 weeks, and she believed her victory was assured. She was wrong. The test was nearly complete, and Judgment Day was coming. I just had to endure 2 more weeks of humiliation, 2 more weeks of watching my son slip away, 2 more weeks of pretending to be exactly what Madison thought I was, a poor, powerless old man with nothing to offer but disappointment. The hardest part wasn't the insults or the exclusion. It was seeing Nathan's spirit dimming day by day, watching him accept less than he deserved because Madison had convinced him it was all he was worth. That more than anything strengthened my resolve. The wedding preparations continued without me, but I had preparations of my own. The venue was set, the flowers ordered, the photographer booked. Madison had planned every detail of her perfect day. She just hadn't planned on me. The 2 weeks before Nathan's wedding passed like a gathering storm. Madison, confident in her victory, grew bolder with each passing day. What she didn't know was that every cruelty, every calculated move was being documented and prepared for a revelation that would shatter her carefully constructed world. It started with the rehearsal dinner invitations. Madison had them professionally printed on pearl cardstock with gold embossing. When mine arrived, I noticed immediately that it listed the wrong time. The invitation said 8 o'clock, but when I called Nathan to confirm, he mentioned everyone was arriving at 6. 6, I said, confused. My invitation says 8. I heard him shuffling papers in the background. That's weird. Let me check with Madison. He came back on the line a moment later, his voice carefully neutral. Madison says there must have been a printing error. She's really sorry, Dad. You'll be there at 6, right? Of course, I said, adding this to my growing list. But Madison's cruelest act was yet to come. 3 days before the wedding, she called me directly, which was unusual. Her voice carried a false urgency that immediately put me on guard. Sheldon, we have a situation, she began. I'm at the house with Nathan and something's missing from my purse. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. $500 in cash. I had it for wedding expenses, and now it's gone. I hate to even think this, but you were the only one here yesterday when Nathan and I stepped out. My blood ran cold. Madison, I didn't take any money from your purse. I'm not saying you did. She continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. But maybe you needed it, and were too proud to ask. We all know about your financial situation. There's no shame in needing help. I didn't take your money, I repeated firmly. Could you just check your jacket pockets? Sometimes we do things without thinking, especially when we're stressed. The wedding has been hard on everyone. I wanted to hang up to rage at the accusation. Instead, I played along. I'll check, but I know I didn't take anything. Please do. And Sheldon, let's keep this between us for now. I haven't told Nathan yet. I wouldn't want to upset him so close to the wedding. After I hung up, I went straight to my jacket, the one I'd worn to their house the day before. In the inside pocket, I found 5 $100 bills crisp, and knew exactly where Madison had planted them during her brief hug goodbye. I sat down heavily, staring at the planted money. This wasn't just about isolation anymore. She was setting me up as a thief, creating a narrative that would justify whatever came next. Maybe barring me from the wedding entirely, or using it as grounds to push for that assisted living facility she loved mentioning. I called Thomas immediately. I need you to review all your footage from yesterday. Madison's making her move. Within hours, Thomas had found what I needed. His surveillance caught Madison entering my truck while Nathan and I were in the backyard. She'd used the spare key Nathan kept, opened the door, and planted something inside. The footage was crystal clear, her face perfectly visible as she looked around to make sure no one was watching. She's getting sloppy, Thomas observed. Arrogance makes people careless. That evening, Madison orchestrated her trap. She and Nathan came by the house, Nathan looking uncomfortable, while Madison played the role of concerned victim. Dad, Nathan said, his voice pained. Madison's money is missing. She thinks maybe you picked it up by accident. By accident, I repeated, looking at Madison. Her eyes glittered with false sympathy. These things happen, she said sweetly, especially when people are under stress. If you have it, we can just forget this whole misunderstanding. I stood up, slowly walked to the coat closet, and retrieved my jacket. Reaching into the pocket, I pulled out the 5 bills. Nathan's face crumbled. Dad! I didn't take this, I said, but I could see he didn't believe me. Why would he? The evidence was right there in my hand. Madison placed a comforting hand on Nathan's arm. It's okay, sweetheart. Your father's been under a lot of pressure. We understand. I'm keeping the money, I said suddenly. Both of them looked shocked. Madison recovered first. Excuse me. You said it's mine, right? That I took it because I needed it. Fine. I'm keeping it. Consider it payment for all the insults I've endured. Madison's mask slipped for just a moment, showing the fury beneath. You're admitting you stole from me. I'm admitting nothing except that this money was in my pocket. You said I must have needed it. Maybe I did. Nathan stood up, his face a mixture of disappointment and anger. Dad, this isn't you. Just give Madison her money back and apologize. No. The simple refusal hung in the air. Madison's eyes narrowed as she realized I wasn't playing the script she'd written. Then you're not welcome at our wedding, she said triumphantly. I won't have a thief at my celebration. Madison, Nathan protested. That's too far. Is it? She turned to him, tears suddenly appearing. Your father just admitted to stealing from me. What else has he taken? What else will he take? Can we trust him around our gifts? Our guests. It was masterfully done. Nathan wavered, torn between loyalty to me and the woman he loved. There must be an explanation, he said weakly. The explanation, Madison said, is that your father is desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. But don't worry, darling. We'll still take care of him. After we're married, we'll make sure he gets the help he needs. The threat was clear. After the wedding, when she had more influence, she'd push for power of attorney for control over my affairs. All based on this manufactured incident. I think you should leave, I told them both. Nathan's shoulders slumped. Dad, please. Just apologize. Make this right. I have nothing to apologize for, I said, meeting Madison's gaze. And everything will be made right, just not tonight. They left with Nathan in tears, and Madison radiating satisfaction. She thought she'd won the ultimate victory, turning my son against me completely, just days before the wedding. I sat in my living room afterward, holding the planted money and thinking about Harold. He'd warned me that wealth reveals character, but poverty did too. It showed who would kick you when you were down, who would exploit perceived weakness, who would destroy family bonds for their own gain. The next morning, Patricia Caldwell appeared at my door. She looked haggard, stress etched in every line of her face. "I heard what happened," she said without preamble. "May I come in?" I let her in, and she sat on my couch, the same spot where Madison had laid out those assisted living brochures months ago. "She planted that money," Patricia said. "I know my daughter. She did the same thing to Marcus's mother, accused her of stealing jewelry. It's her way of eliminating threats." "Why tell me this?" I asked. Patricia pulled out a flask from her purse, took a sip, then offered it to me. I declined. "Because I'm a coward," she said simply. "I watched her destroy Marcus, and I said nothing. I watched her target you, and I kept quiet. But Richard's going to federal prison, Sheldon. The FBI raided his office yesterday. It'll be in the papers tomorrow." I hadn't expected it to happen so soon. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. She waved off my sympathy. "He brought it on himself. Greed, always more greed. Madison learned from the best." She took another sip. "She doesn't know yet. Richard's lawyer advised him to keep quiet until after the wedding. Let her have her special day before her world implodes." "What will you do?" "Leave him," she said matter-of-factly. "Take what little isn't seized and start over. Maybe somewhere warm, where no one knows the Caldwell name." She looked at me directly. "But first, I want to help you save your son." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive. "What's this?" "Security footage from our home system. Madison bringing that money into the house the day before she planted it. Her on the phone with Brittany laughing about her plan. Everything you need to prove your innocence." I stared at the drive. "Why didn't you stop her?" "Because I'm selfish," Patricia admitted. "I wanted her married and out of my house before the indictments came. Nathan seemed like a safe harbor for her. I didn't care what it cost him or you. And now I'm trying to be better. Too little too late, but it's something." She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "She's planning something for the wedding," Patricia warned. "I don't know what, but she's been making calls, arranging things. Be careful, Sheldon. When Madison feels cornered, she's at her most dangerous." After she left, I added the USB drive to my collection of evidence. The pieces were all in place, now recordings of Madison's cruelty video of her planting evidence, testimony from her mother, documentation of her plans to control Nathan's assets. Thomas called that afternoon with one final piece of information. "I tracked down Marcus Wellington," he said. "Madison's first husband. He's willing to testify about what she did to him, but only after your son's wedding. He doesn't want to be accused of interference." "What did she do to him?" "Isolated him from his family, convinced him his mother was toxic. Had him sign a prenup that seemed fair, but had hidden clauses. Cleaned him out in the divorce after 13 months of marriage. He lost his house, his savings, half his retirement. But the worst part, his mother died while they were estranged. Madison had convinced him not to visit her in hospice, said it would be too stressful for him." I closed my eyes, imagining Nathan in Marcus's place. Cut off from me, manipulated, used, and discarded. "Thank you, Thomas. Send me everything you have." The rehearsal dinner was tomorrow. The wedding in 2 days. Madison thought she'd barred me from both, but she'd underestimated one thing: a father's love for his son. I made 3 phone calls that afternoon. The first was to James, the event coordinator at the Grandview Country Club. "Mr. Morrison," he said warmly, "I've been expecting your call." The second was to Mr. Blackwood, Harold's attorney. "It's time," I told him. set everything in motion. The third was to Ruth. "I need a favor," I said. "A big one." "Finally," she said with satisfaction. "I thought you'd never ask." The next morning, the news broke about Richard Caldwell's indictment. Federal agents had raided 3 of his properties and frozen his assets. The wedding venue called Madison to inform her that the Caldwell Club membership had been suspended, putting the entire event in jeopardy. I knew because Nathan called me panic in his voice. "Dad, I know things are complicated between us right now, but Madison's father was arrested. The wedding venue is threatening to cancel unless we pay the full balance immediately. $20,000. We don't have it." "I'm sorry to hear that, son," I said carefully. "Dad, I hate to ask, but is there any way? Could you maybe help even a small loan?" The irony was painful. Here was my son who believed I'd stolen $500 out of desperation, asking me for $20,000. "Nathan," I said gently, "you just accused me of being a thief. Now you want to borrow money?" The silence stretched between us. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "About everything. Madison's just so stressed, and I don't know what to do." "Come to the rehearsal dinner," I told him. "Everything will be clear after that." "But Madison said you weren't welcome." "I'll be there," I said firmly. 6 o'clock, not 8, like my invitation said. 6 o'clock, Nathan. Don't let her tell you different. I hung up before he could respond. The pieces were in motion now, and tomorrow night at that rehearsal dinner, Madison would finally learn who she'd been dealing with all along. The setup was complete. Now all that remained was the execution. The grand ballroom at the Grandview Country Club was a study in elegant desperation when I arrived at 6 o'clock sharp. Madison had managed to salvage the rehearsal dinner despite her father's arrest, though the strain showed in every forced smile and brittle laugh. The room dripped with white roses and golden ribbons, a testament to champagne dreams on a suddenly beer budget. I entered through the main doors, my cane tapping against the marble floor. I'd worn my best suit, the one Emma had bought me for our 25th anniversary. It might have been old, but it fit perfectly, and tonight I wanted to look like the man I was not, the caricature Madison had painted. The conversation stopped as I walked in. Madison, standing near the bar in a designer dress she probably couldn't afford anymore, went rigid. Her face cycled through emotions, shock, fury, then a calculated calm. "Sheldon," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I thought we agreed you wouldn't be coming tonight." "You agreed," I corrected, walking steadily toward the family tables. "I never said a word." Nathan appeared at my side, relief evident on his face. "Dad, you came." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I said, patting his shoulder. Madison materialized between us, her manicured nails digging into Nathan's arm. "Darling, we should discuss this. Your father and I had an understanding after the incident. The incident where you accused me of theft," I said pleasantly. "Or a different incident." The room was listening now, though everyone pretended to be absorbed in their drinks and appetizers. Patricia Caldwell sat at a corner table nursing what was definitely not her first martini, watching the scene with knowing eyes. "This is neither the time nor the place," Madison hissed. "You're right," I agreed. "Let's enjoy dinner first. I see you've placed me at the children's table again. How thoughtful." But as I moved toward the designated table in the back corner, Ruth appeared with Anne from Nathan's office. "Actually," Ruth announced in her courtroom voice, "Sheldon will be sitting with us at table 3. We've already arranged it with the venue." Madison's composure cracked. "You can't just rearrange my seating chart." "Of course not." Ruth smiled. "That would be presumptuous. James from event planning did it for us. Lovely man, very accommodating." James himself appeared then, the same event coordinator I'd secretly hired months ago when I'd learned about the venue selection. What Madison didn't know was that I owned a significant stake in the Grandview Country Club through Harold's estate. "Is there a problem with the seating, Ms. Caldwell?" James asked professionally. "I can certainly review the arrangements." Madison looked between us, sensing a trap, but not understanding its nature. No, she said finally. It's fine. Seat him wherever. As the dinner progressed, I noticed the small changes James had implemented. The microphone system I'd requested was in place. The projection screen, ostensibly for the slideshow of Nathan and Madison's photos, was positioned perfectly. Everything was ready. Madison regained her composure during the salad course, standing to address the room with practiced charm. Thank you all for coming tonight. She began raising her champagne glass. Tomorrow, I marry the love of my life, and I couldn't be happier. Nathan has brought such joy to my world, and I look forward to building our perfect life together. She went on about their future, their dreams, their plans for the family they'd create. Not once did she mention the family Nathan already had. I might as well have been invisible, which suited my purposes perfectly. I also want to thank my parents. She continued, her voice wavering slightly. Daddy couldn't be here tonight due to a business emergency, but his spirit is with us. Business emergency. That was one way to describe a federal arrest. I caught Patricia's bitter smile from across the room. As Madison spoke, I quietly retrieved my phone and sent a pre-typed message to Thomas. Begin Phase 1. The slideshow started as the main course was served. Photos of Nathan and Madison at various events, on vacations, at parties. All carefully curated to show their perfect relationship. But I noticed what was missing. There were no photos of Nathan's childhood. None of his mother. None of the life he'd lived before Madison. It was during the dessert course that Madison made her crucial mistake. Emboldened by wine and the success of her damage control, she decided to address the elephant in the room. I also want to say, she announced, standing again with her glass, that family is about more than blood. It's about support, about being there for each other, about contributing to our shared happiness. Nathan and I are blessed to have family who understand that love isn't measured in dollars, but in presence and participation. Several guests glanced my way, understanding the barb. Nathan looked uncomfortable, but Madison was just getting started. Some people, she continued, her eyes finding mine, think showing up is enough. But real family does more than just occupy space. Real family contributes, supports, and knows when to step back gracefully. Is that so? I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room. The room went silent. Madison's smile turned predatory. Did you have something to add, Sheldon? Some wisdom from your years of experience? I stood slowly, using my cane for support. Just curious about your definition of family contribution. Does it include lying, theft, attempted elder abuse? How dare you? Madison's mask finally slipped completely. You're the thief. You stole money from my purse. Did I? I pulled out my phone. Let's discuss that. But first, perhaps everyone would like to hear your thoughts on family contribution from a few months ago. Before she could object, I pressed play. Madison's voice filled the room through the venue's sound system, James having connected my phone moments before. He's poorer than we thought. Social Security and a tiny pension. The house is all he has, and it's mortgaged. Nathan will inherit basically nothing unless the old fool dies soon. Gasps rippled through the room. Nathan's face went white. But I wasn't done. The next recording played, "Get him out of the picture, into a home where he belongs. Once we're married, I'll have power of attorney within a year. Nathan's too trusting to see it coming." "Those are out of context," Madison shrieked. "He recorded me illegally." "One-party consent state," Ruth said helpfully. "Completely legal. I should know. I practiced law for 40 years. The projection screen came to life, then showing security footage from the Caldwell home. There was Madison counting out 5 $100 bills, putting them in an envelope marked for Dad's jacket. "That's from your parents' security system," I explained as Madison watched in horror. "Your mother thought I should see it." All eyes turned to Patricia, who raised her martini in a mock toast. "But wait," I said, channeling my inner herald, "there's more." The screen now showed Madison entering my truck, planting the money in my jacket. The timestamp clearly showed this was the day before she accused me of theft. "You set me up," Nathan said, his voice hollow. You planted that money to make me think my father was a thief. Nathan, baby, I can explain. Madison started, but I interrupted. Let's let Marcus Wellington explain instead, I suggested. Your first husband had some interesting insights about your methods. I played the recorded phone conversation with Marcus, his pain evident, even through the speaker, as he described Madison's systematic isolation of him from his family, her financial manipulation, and the way she'd prevented him from seeing his dying mother. She convinced me my mom was toxic, Marcus's voice said. Said she was trying to break us up. Mom died alone because I believed Madison's lies. I'll never forgive myself. Nathan sank into his chair, the full horror of his situation finally clear. But Madison rallied, her survival instincts kicking in. None of this matters, she declared. So what if I tried to protect Nathan from a father who couldn't even provide for him properly? So what if I wanted better for us than some pathetic postal worker's pension? I love Nathan. Do you? I asked. Thomas, please play the final recording. My investigator, who'd been posing as a waiter, connected his device. Madison's voice again, but this time talking to her divorce attorney. A year and a day after the wedding I file. California community property laws mean I get half of everything. His 401k, his stock options, the house. My prenup is airtight. He'll never see it coming. When was this recorded? Nathan asked numbly. Last Tuesday, Thomas replied. 3 days before your wedding. The room erupted. Guests talked excitedly among themselves. Patricia slow-clapped from her corner, and Madison's bridesmaids backed away from her as if she were contagious. You don't understand. Madison turned desperately to Nathan. That was just insurance. In case things went wrong, I do love you. Like you loved Marcus, I asked quietly. Tell me, Madison, what was your plan for me? The assisted living facility in the bad part of town? Or were you hoping I'd die conveniently soon? You horrible old man, she screamed. You've ruined everything. My perfect wedding. My perfect life. No, I said firmly. You ruined it yourself. Every cruel word, every manipulative act, every moment you tried to separate my son from his family. You painted me as pathetic and poor someone to be ashamed of. Well, let me tell you something about this pathetic old postal worker. I nodded to James, who handed me an envelope. 6 months ago, my brother Harold died and left me his estate. $78 million to be exact. I own this country club. I own the hotel where your wedding was supposed to happen tomorrow. I own the flower shop, the catering company, and even the jewelry store where Nathan bought your ring. The silence was deafening. Madison's face had gone gray. I could have stopped this months ago, I continued. Could have revealed the truth and sent you packing. But I needed Nathan to see who you really were, to understand what kind of person he was about to marry. Every test I gave you, you failed. Every opportunity to show kindness, you chose cruelty instead. The wedding, Madison whispered. The deposits, the vendors. All canceled as of an hour ago, James informed her. Per Mr. Morrison's instructions. Your credit cards were declined, and without the Caldwell family guarantee, there's no event tomorrow. Nathan stood slowly, removing the engagement ring box from his pocket. He set it on the table in front of Madison. We're done, he said simply. Get out. Nathan, please. Madison grabbed for him, but he stepped back. Your father manipulated all of this. He lied to you. The only liar here is you, Nathan said. Dad let me see the truth. That's the greatest gift he could have given me. Madison looked around wildly for support, but found none. Even her bridesmaids had abandoned her. Finally, her eyes landed on Patricia. Mother, tell them. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Patricia finished her martini and stood unsteadily. The only misunderstanding, darling, is that you thought you could be crueler than the world. Well, the world fought back. Your father's in federal custody, our assets are frozen, and you just lost your meal ticket. Welcome to reality. Security appeared. then James having summoned them discreetly. Madison was escorted out, her designer heels clicking frantically against the marble, as she screamed threats about lawsuits and revenge. As the room settled, Nathan came to me, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, I'm so sorry. Everything I said, everything I believed." I pulled him into a hug, the first real embrace we'd shared in months. "You have nothing to apologize for, son. You were being manipulated by a master. The important thing is that you're free now." "The money," he said, pulling back. $78 million. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because Harold taught me something important. Money doesn't change who people are. It reveals who they are." Madison showed us exactly who she was when she thought I had nothing. Ruth joined us, placing a supportive hand on Nathan's shoulder. "Your father's quite the strategist. Reminded me of some of my best cases. Though I've never seen anyone play the long game quite like this." "What happens now?" Nathan asked, looking around at the remnants of what should have been his rehearsal dinner. "Now," I said, "we have dinner with people who actually care about you. James, could you remove the children's table and bring everyone together? And perhaps some better champagne? I believe we have something to celebrate." "The freedom from a terrible mistake," Ruth suggested. "And the reunion of a family," I added. As the evening transformed from disaster to celebration, I thought about Harold. His money had indeed revealed character, just not in the way anyone expected. It had revealed Madison's greed and cruelty, but also the strength of the bond between Nathan and me, a bond that survived even her best efforts to break it. Thomas approached as the party wound down. "That was masterfully done, Mr. Morrison. Though I have to ask, how long were you planning this exact scenario?" "I wasn't," I admitted. "I was just gathering evidence to protect my son. But when she planted that money, tried to frame me as a thief, that's when I knew it had to be tonight. She'd shown herself capable of anything." "What about the wedding guests? The people flying in from out of town?" I smiled. "James has arranged for them to enjoy a lovely reception tomorrow anyway. Open bar, full dinner, live band. Consider it my gift to them for supporting Nathan. Just no wedding." Nathan overheard and shook his head in amazement. "You really did think of everything." "Not everything," I corrected. "I didn't think about how much it would hurt to watch you suffer these past months. Every time she insulted me, I saw it wound you too. That was the hardest part." We stood together in the ruins of Madison's carefully planned evening, but somehow it felt more like a beginning than an ending. The truth had finally come to light, and with it, the freedom to move forward. As we prepared to leave, Patricia approached one last time. "Mr. Morrison," she said, more sober than she'd been all evening, "I owe you an apology, and a debt of gratitude. You saved your son from my daughter's fate." "We all make choices," I replied. "Madison made hers. You made yours by giving me that evidence. That took courage." "Too little, too late," she said sadly. "But at least Nathan won't suffer like Marcus did." As I walked out with Nathan, Ruth, and Anne, the night air felt fresh and full of possibility. Tomorrow would have been a wedding built on lies and manipulation. Instead, it would be a day of new beginnings. "Dad," Nathan said as we reached the parking lot, "that money from Madison's purse, the $500, what did you do with it?" I smiled. "Donated it to the charity that helps elderly people avoid predatory guardianships. Seemed appropriate." Nathan actually laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from him in months. Only you would turn her frame job into something positive. As we went our separate ways, I felt Harold's presence somehow. His gift hadn't just been money. It had been the opportunity to protect what mattered most. Family, truth, love that doesn't calculate or manipulate but simply exists. Madison had called me a pathetic old man. Perhaps to her, that's all I'd ever be. But tonight, I was a father who'd saved his son from a devastating mistake. And that was worth more than all the money in the world. The morning of what should have been Nathan's wedding dawned clear and bright, a perfect California day that seemed to mock the chaos of the night before. I woke early, as had become my habit, and found Nathan asleep on my couch. He'd followed me home after the rehearsal dinner, unable to face returning to the apartment he'd shared with Madison. "Morning, Dad," he said groggily as I handed him coffee. "Is this really happening? Did I really almost marry someone who—" "You loved her," I said simply. "Love makes us vulnerable to deception. The important thing is that you saw the truth in time." Nathan's phone had been buzzing nonstop since dawn. Wedding guests confused about the cancellation vendors demanding explanations, and Madison herself leaving increasingly unhinged voicemails that Nathan deleted without listening. "What do I tell everyone?" he asked, looking lost. "The truth," I suggested. "Or as much of it as you're comfortable sharing. James at the club is prepared for whatever you decide." By noon, we arrived at the Grandview Country Club. True to my word, I'd arranged for the reception to continue as a celebration, just without the wedding. Guests were already arriving, some confused others, having heard rumors about the rehearsal dinner drama. Nathan stood at the entrance, greeting people with remarkable composure. "Thank you for coming. The wedding is off, but please enjoy the reception. Consider it a celebration of dodged bullets and new beginnings." Most guests were surprisingly supportive. Madison had apparently shown her true colors to more people than just me over the months of wedding planning. Her demands, her treatment of vendors, her dismissive attitude toward anyone she deemed beneath her had not gone unnoticed. Around 2 o'clock, when the reception was in full swing, security alerted me to a situation at the main entrance. Madison had arrived still in her wedding dress. "Let her in," I told security, "but stay close." She swept into the ballroom like an avenging angel in white satin and lace her makeup perfect, despite the tears streaming down her face. The music stopped. Conversations died. 200 guests turned to stare. "Nathan," she called out, her voice carrying across the room. "How can you do this to me, to us?" Nathan stepped forward, flanked by Ruth and myself. "Madison, you need to leave." "Not until you hear me out." She moved closer, her designer dress train dragging behind her. "Your father poisoned you against me. He planned this whole thing." "You're right," I said, stepping forward. "I did plan to reveal the truth. Would you prefer I had waited until after you'd filed for divorce in a year and a day?" Madison's face twisted with rage. "You horrible man. You think your money makes you better than everyone?" "No," I said calmly. "I think my actions make me better than you. But please, since you're here in your dress, and everyone's watching, why don't you tell them your side? Explain why you tried to have me declared incompetent. Tell them about the assisted living facilities you picked out. Share your plans for my son's assets." "I was trying to protect Nathan," she screamed. "From you. From your influence. You're nothing but a manipulative old bastard who couldn't stand to see his son happy." "Happy?" Nathan interjected. "You isolated me from my father, convinced me he was a burden, tried to make me believe he was a thief. That was happiness." Madison whirled on him. "I gave you everything. I planned the perfect life for us." "You planned the perfect life for yourself," Nathan corrected. "I was just the bank account that came with it." The crowd murmured, some people recording on their phones despite the club's policy against it. Madison noticed and played to her audience. "Fine," she declared. "You want to humiliate me, destroy my special day. Then everyone should know the truth about the great Sheldon Morrison." She pulled out her phone, triumphantly waving it. "I have recordings too. Conversations where Sheldon admits he never liked me, where he plotted to break us up, where he—" "Go ahead," I encouraged. "Play them." Madison fumbled with her phone, increasingly frantic. Whatever she thought she had, it wasn't there. Because of course it wasn't. Her recordings were fabrications, just like her love for my son. "This isn't over," she hissed, abandoning her phone. "I'll sue you for intentional infliction of emotional distress, for defamation, for—" "For what?" Ruth stepped forward in full lawyer mode. "For exposing your attempts at elder abuse. for revealing your fraudulent behavior, for protecting Nathan from financial exploitation. Please do sue. I haven't had a good court battle since retirement. I'll represent Mr. Morrison pro bono." That's when Madison made her final mistake. In her rage and desperation, she lunged at me, her manicured nails aimed at my face. But I'd been expecting something like this. I simply stepped aside, using my cane for balance, and let momentum carry her past me. She crashed into the gift table, sending wrapped packages flying. As she tried to regain her footing, tangled in her own dress, security moved in. "Don't touch me!" she shrieked as they helped her up. "Do you know who I am? My father is Richard Caldwell." The same Richard Caldwell who was arrested for fraud yesterday. Someone in the crowd called out. "We know exactly who you are." As security escorted Madison out, she continued screaming threats and promises of revenge. But her words carried no weight anymore. She was just a desperate woman in a wedding dress with nowhere to go and no one to con. After she was gone, the atmosphere in the room shifted. What had been awkward sympathy transformed into genuine celebration. Nathan stood before the crowd, no longer the groom, but something better, a man who'd found his truth. "Thank you all for being here," he said, his voice steady. "I know this isn't the day any of us expected, but maybe it's the day I needed. I want to thank my father who loved me enough to let me hate him temporarily, to save me from a lifetime of misery." Applause rippled through the room. I felt tears prick my eyes as Nathan continued. "For months, I watched the woman I thought I loved belittle and demean my father. I made excuses for her behavior, chose her lies over his lifetime of truth. I failed him in every way a son can fail a father, but he never gave up on me." Nathan looked directly at me. "Dad, you asked me once what Mom would think of Madison. I was too blind to see it then, but I know now. She would have seen through Madison in a heartbeat, just like you did. And she would be proud of what you did to protect me." The mention of Emma broke my composure. Nathan crossed the room and embraced me as the guests applauded again. "So please," Nathan addressed the room once more, "enjoy this reception. Eat, drink, dance. Celebrate the family and friends who show their true selves every day, not just when they think no one's watching." The party resumed with renewed energy. I found myself surrounded by well-wishers, people who'd watched Madison's behavior with growing concern, but hadn't known how to intervene. Nathan's colleague David shook my hand. "I tried to warn Nathan about some things Madison said at the office Christmas party. About how she couldn't wait to quit working once they were married, and how Nathan's stock options would set them up nicely. He didn't want to hear it. Love is blind," I said. "Sometimes it takes extreme measures to restore sight." Sarah Chen, who I remembered Madison had specifically excluded from the wedding party for not fitting the aesthetic, approached with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Morrison, thank you. Nathan's one of my best friends, and watching him change over the past year was heartbreaking. He became so isolated, so different. We all saw it, but didn't know what to do." "You're a good friend," I told her. "He'll need friends like you now more than ever." As the afternoon wore on, I noticed Nathan gravitating toward Sarah. They talked quietly in a corner, her hand occasionally touching his arm in comfort. It was too soon for anything romantic, but I saw something in Nathan's eyes I hadn't seen in months, genuine warmth toward another person. Thomas found me on the terrace watching the sunset. "Hell of a job, Mr. Morrison," he said, joining me at the railing. "Though I have to tell you, Madison's not done. My sources say she's already shopping for lawyers." "Let her," I said. "She has no case and no money to pursue one. The Caldwell assets are frozen, and no attorney will take her on contingency once they see our evidence." Still, Thomas warned, "People like Madison don't give up easily. She'll try something. Then we'll be ready," I said simply. "But today my son is free. That's all that matters." As evening fell and the reception wound down, Nathan and I found ourselves alone in the garden where the ceremony would have taken place. An arbor of white roses stood against the sunset, beautiful but purposeless now. I keep thinking about Marcus, Nathan said quietly. How he lost his mother because of Madison's lies. You could have been— But I'm not, I interrupted. I'm right here, son. I always was, even when you couldn't see me past her shadow. How do I move forward from this? He asked. How do I trust anyone again? You start by trusting yourself, I advised. Madison succeeded because you didn't trust your own instincts. Some part of you knew something was wrong, but you pushed it aside. Listen to that voice next time. Next time, he repeated with a bitter laugh. I can't imagine a next time. You will, I assured him. When you're ready. And when you find someone real, someone who loves you for you and not your portfolio, you'll know the difference. Because now you've seen the worst of what people can be. We stood in comfortable silence, father and son, watching the last light fade from the sky. The wedding that wasn't had become something more valuable, a lesson in truth, family, and the courage to see people as they really are. Dad, Nathan said as we prepared to leave. What are you going to do with all that money, Harold's fortune? I considered the question. I've been thinking about that. Maybe set up a foundation to help people like Marcus's mother, elderly people being exploited by family members. Fund legal aid for seniors facing guardianship abuse. What do you think? I think Harold would approve, Nathan said, and Mom would be proud. As we walked back through the country club, past the remnants of Madison's dream wedding, I felt a sense of completion. The test was over. The truth had prevailed. And most importantly, I had my son back. Tomorrow, Madison would probably make good on her threats. She'd call lawyers, spread lies, try to salvage her reputation. But tonight, she was just a bitter memory in a designer dress while Nathan and I were family again. That was the only victory that mattered. 6 months had passed since the wedding that wasn't. Nathan had thrown himself into therapy and worked slowly rebuilding his sense of self after Madison's manipulation. We met for dinner every Sunday, a tradition we'd re-established with newfound appreciation. On this particular evening, he seemed lighter somehow, more like the son I'd known before Madison's shadow fell over our lives. Dad, he said over coffee, I want you to meet someone. I raised an eyebrow but kept my expression neutral. Oh, her name is Sarah Chen. You actually met her at the reception. She was one of my friends Madison excluded from the wedding party. I remembered Sarah, the young woman with kind eyes who'd thanked me for saving Nathan. The pediatric nurse. Kindergarten teacher, Nathan corrected with a smile. We've been taking things slow. Very slow. But she makes me feel like myself again. I'd be happy to meet her properly, I said, meaning it. Actually, Nathan said, it's my birthday next week. I thought maybe a small dinner. Just the three of us. The hope in his voice made my heart ache. That sounds perfect, son. The following week, I arrived at Nathan's apartment with a chocolate cake I'd baked myself, Emma's recipe. Sarah was already there, helping Nathan in the kitchen. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. No designer clothes, no perfect makeup, just a woman comfortable in her own skin. Mr. Morrison, she greeted warmly, wiping her hands on a dish towel before offering to shake. It's so good to see you again. Please call me Sheldon, I said, immediately charmed by her genuine smile. Dinner was a revelation. Sarah talked enthusiastically about her kindergarten class, laughing as she described their recent attempts at growing beans in cups. She asked about my postal route days, genuinely interested in stories Madison would have dismissed as beneath her notice. Nathan tells me you're quite the baker, Sarah said as I unveiled the cake. He raves about your apple pie. It's nothing special, I demurred. Dad's being modest, Nathan interjected. He won blue ribbons at the county fair 3 years running before Mom got sick. You'll have to teach me, Sarah said. I can barely manage box brownies without burning them. As she helped clear the dishes, insisting over my protests, Nathan caught my eye and smiled. I understood his unspoken question and gave a subtle nod. Sarah had passed the only test that mattered. She treated everyone with equal kindness and respect. Over the next few months, Sarah became a regular part of our lives. She joined our Sunday dinners, helped me plant Emma's roses in the spring, and never once asked about my financial situation or treated me differently when Nathan finally told her about Harold's inheritance. "That must have been a terrible burden," she said when she learned about the test I'd put Madison through. "Watching your son suffer while knowing you could end it at any time." "The hardest thing I've ever done," I admitted. "Harder than losing Emma in some ways. At least with grief, you can mourn openly." One evening, as summer approached, Nathan called with excitement in his voice. "Dad, are you free next Saturday? Sarah's school is having their end-of-year celebration. She wants us both there." "Us both?" "Her class has been asking about her boyfriend's dad who tells funny stories." Nathan laughed. "Apparently you're something of a legend, since she shared your story about the postal dog who loved everyone except mailmen." That Saturday, I found myself in a kindergarten classroom, decorated with paper flowers and crayon masterpieces. 25-year-olds stared at me with the unfiltered curiosity only children possess. "Are you really old?" one boy asked immediately. "Timothy," Sarah admonished gently, but I laughed. "Very old," I confirmed. "So old that when I was your age, dinosaurs delivered the mail." The children gasped in delight, and I spent the next hour regaling them with silly stories, while Sarah and Nathan watched from the back of the room. She looked at him, the way Emma used to look at me, with genuine affection, untainted by calculation. As the school year ended and summer bloomed, I watched Nathan and Sarah's relationship deepen. She spent 4th of July with us, helped Nathan repaint his apartment, and even convinced him to adopt a rescue dog they named Baxter. One August evening, Nathan appeared at my door looking nervous. "Dad, I need to ask you something." I invited him in, noting his fidgeting hands and restless energy. "What's on your mind?" He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple solitaire diamond ring, nothing like the ostentatious rock Madison had demanded. "I want to ask Sarah to marry me," he said. "But I need to know what you think, really think, not just the polite answer." I studied my son's face, seeing the fear there, the lingering scars from Madison's betrayal. But I also saw hope, genuine love, and the wisdom that comes from survived pain. "What does your gut tell you?" I asked. "That she's nothing like Madison," he answered immediately. "That she loves me for me. That when I'm with her, I don't have to pretend to be anything other than who I am." "Then you have your answer," I said. "But Nathan, can I share something?" He nodded. "I never told Sarah about the money," I continued. "Harold's inheritance. She's never asked about my finances, never suggested I need help, never treated me as anything other than your father, who she seems genuinely fond of. That tells me everything I need to know about her character." Nathan's eyes misted. "She jokes that you're the bonus prize in our relationship. Says any man who loves his father that much must have a good heart." "When are you planning to ask her?" "Her birthday next month. I thought maybe a picnic at the park where we had our first official date. Simple like her." "Perfect," I said, meaning it. The proposal went beautifully. Sarah said yes, immediately crying and laughing simultaneously. When they called to share the news, I could hear the joy in both their voices, unmarred by calculation or greed. Their engagement party was the antithesis of Madison's orchestrated events. Sarah's parents flew in from Ohio, warm people who owned a small hardware store. Her mother, Linda, pulled me aside during the party. "Sarah tells us you've been through quite an ordeal with Nathan's previous engagement," she said carefully. "I want you to know that we raised our daughter to value character over cash. She'd live in a cardboard box with Nathan if that's what life brought them." "I believe she would." I agreed, touched by the sentiment. As I watched Sarah and Nathan dance in his backyard, surrounded by friends who'd stuck by him through the Madison disaster, I felt Harold's presence again. His test had worked better than he could have imagined, revealing not just Madison's true nature, but eventually leading Nathan to someone worthy of him. Uncle Sheldon. Sarah had taken to calling me that, saying, "Mr. Morrison," made her feel like she was in trouble at school. "Would you dance with me?" I took her hand, my old knee protesting slightly, but managed a respectable slow dance. "Thank you," she said quietly as we swayed to the music. "For what?" "For protecting Nathan, for being the father he needed even when it hurt, and for accepting me so readily after what he went through." "You make him happy," I said simply. "That's all I've ever wanted." "I promise to keep making him happy," she said solemnly. "No games, no manipulation, just love." "I know," I assured her. "You don't have to promise. You just have to be yourself." Later that evening, as the party wound down, Ruth appeared at my elbow. She'd become a regular fixture in our lives, adopting Nathan as an honorary nephew, and Sarah as the daughter she'd never had. "You did it, Sheldon," she said, surveying the happy scene. "You saved him from Madison, and look what life brought instead." "Life and a kindergarten teacher who can't bake," I joked. "The best ones rarely can," Ruth laughed. "Too busy taking care of everyone else to master domestic arts." As the evening ended and guests departed, Nathan and Sarah insisted on cleaning up despite my protests. I watched them work together, efficient and easy in their partnership. No power struggles, no calculated moves, just two people in love handling life's mundane tasks together. "Dad," Nathan said as they prepared to leave, "Sarah and I have been talking. We want a small wedding. Really small. Just family and close friends. Maybe in your backyard, by Mom's roses." I felt my throat tighten. "Your mother would have loved that." "And," Sarah added, taking Nathan's hand, "we were hoping you'd walk Nathan down the aisle. If that's not too weird." "Weird." I managed past the lump in my throat. "It would be an honor." As I stood in my doorway, watching them drive away, Baxter's head poking out the back window, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us here. Madison's cruelty had nearly destroyed my relationship with Nathan, but in the end, it had only made us stronger. Harold's money had indeed revealed character, not just Madison's darkness, but Sarah's light. The fortune that could have been a curse had become a tool for truth. I thought about Madison, occasionally wondering where life had taken her. Thomas had kept tabs, initially reporting that she'd moved to Arizona to live with a distant aunt after her parents' divorce. The last he'd heard, she was working at a real estate office and dating the owner, a man 30 years her senior. Some patterns, it seemed, never changed. But that was the past. The future stood bright before us, filled with the promise of Sarah's laughter, Nathan's renewed confidence, and grandchildren who would grow up surrounded by love instead of manipulation. The recorder that had captured so much pain now sat in a drawer, retired and unnecessary. In its place were new sounds, genuine laughter, honest conversation, and the simple joy of a family that chose each other, not for money or status, but for love. "Harold," I thought, looking up at the stars, "you were right. Wealth reveals character. But sometimes, brother, it reveals more than we ever expected. Sometimes it reveals the very best of what people can be." As I went inside to the home Madison had dismissed as worthless, I felt richer than all $78 million could ever make me. Because I had what she'd never understand: the value of a son who loved me, a future daughter-in-law, who respected me, and the knowledge that truth in the end always prevails. The test was complete. The results were in. And love, real love, had won. Looking back on this entire experience, I realized that every moment of pain was worth it to see Nathan find true happiness with Sarah. To those of you watching who might be facing similar situations with family members, being manipulated or isolated, remember that sometimes the hardest thing to do is to wait and let the truth reveal itself. But also remember that protecting those we love sometimes requires difficult choices and temporary sacrifices. Have you ever had to make a tough decision to protect someone you love, even if it meant they might hate you for it? Temporarily, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to hear more stories about families overcoming challenges and finding their way back to each other. Share this with someone who might need to hear that standing up for family, even when it's hard, is always worth it in the end. Thank you for listening to my story. May you always have the courage to see people for who they really are, and may truth always light your way forward.